Prime Minister Yubaraj.
Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sri Iyer. Today I have a new guest on our show, Sri Yubaraj Ghimire. Yubaraj ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel. So a little bit of a backgrounder on Sri Yubaraj ji. He is a journalist and a TV commentator who resides in Nepal, and he is a frequent contributor to leading newspapers of India, such as the Indian Express. So today we are going to talk about what is happening in Nepal and how Sri Yubaraj ji sees these things play out. So Yubaraj ji, could you perhaps start from what time Nepal became a democracy? Because for a long time it was a kingdom, and then it switched to democracy. And perhaps you can summarize what has been happening from then up until now.
Well, Nepal first experimented with democracy way back in 1959, 60, but that experiment didn't last long because there was a tussle between the elected Prime Minister, BP Koirala, and King Mahendra then. So Parliament was dissolved and political parties banned. So that led to the beginning of an era of, the absolute monarchy. From
Hmm.
1960 to 1990, it was absolute monarchy under a political system called Panchayat system, in which parties were banned, but there was indirectly elected, parliament. But in 1988-89, Nepal had a movement for democracy, and the that resulted in the absolute monarchy, transforming into constitutional monarchy and multi-party political system coming into operation. That was 1991, the first election to parliament, bicameral, like house. One was House of Representative, another was Rashtriya Sabha, the upper house. That system began in 1991, but unfortunately in 1996, the communist, radical communist, calling themselves Maoist, they began an armed insurgency against the state with a declared objective that they will make Nepal a republic, and that continued for 10 years from 1996 to 2006. And in 2006, Maoists came into peace process under India's mediation, although India had put them in the terrorist list. But India ultimately negotiated with the Maoists and brought Maoist and seven other political parties against the monarchy. But at the same time, India also played a very visible role in bringing Maoists to the center stage of power in politics in Nepal against the monarchy. So in 2006, monarchy was put under suspension and abolished in 2008, bringing to an end the monarchy that had a history of about 250 years in Nepal. After that, Republic Nepal tried to bring its constitution through the Constituent Assembly, which was elected in 2008, but it couldn't finish the task in 2 years. Its term was extended by another 2 years. It couldn't complete the task again. Another Constituent Assembly was elected. That brought the constitution in 2015. And Nepal has been a republic for the past 12 years, but politics has remained very unstable and very anarchic. So now, two major communist parties. One was Maoist, which came from the underground movement, and another Communist Party of Nepal, Unified Marxist-Leninists. They joined hands together to form Nepal Communist Party about 30 months ago under a power-sharing agreement that Prachanda, the leader of the Maoists, and Oli, the leader of UML, would, be two chairpersons of the party, and Oli would be the prime minister for the first half of 5-year tenure of parliament, which was elected in 2017. Now the current tussle that you've been hearing about is about Prachanda is taking claim that you said in 30 months you will hand over the power to me, and Oli refusing to, like honor that agreement. So, but it has led to other, like other problems within the ruling party, and we'll be discussing subsequently.
Yes. So, in terms of the relative strengths in the elected assembly, meaning like how much of a majority does the communist combine have?
Well, quite a comfortable. It's the House of Representative, that's the directly elected House or lower house, has a strength of 275. I think three seats are lying vacant
Okay.
because members are suspended. But in that, the ruling party has 174, 9 or 10 sort of two-third majority on its one, and the main opposition Nepali Congress has 63 members. So, and there are other parties, Madhya-centric parties, which is now called Nepal Samajwadi Party, that has got about 33, 34 members. So this is the current arrangement. So the government commands comfortable majority there.
So, so what was the agreement in 2017 between Sri Prachanda and Sri Oli? When was Oli going to hand over power to Prachanda?
Well, in about 30 months ago, when the two parties formally united to form the Nepal Communist Party, the two agreements. One, when the two, Prachanda and Oli, would continue as party chairperson, both chairpersons, till the party congress is held and election is over. I mean, election and party congress elects the new chief. That hasn't taken place yet. The other was because Oli he was the star campaigner for the during the election, and many believe that like he was natural leader at that point of time. So both agreed that first half of parliament, Oli would be the leader, prime minister. Then he will, like hand over the leadership to Prasanda during the second half. That second half is to come in August next month. So, but Prasanda has made it very clear that if you want to be the prime minister, now face the electorate and like win the mandate, and you become prime minister, meaning that he's not going to hand over.
I see. So basically, it's a challenge saying that if you want to continue, then you'll have to go back to the masses. Assume that that happens, then will this combine still be fighting jointly, or will they be fighting separately?
Well, the current trend today, the standing committee of the Nepal Communist Party was to meet
Yes.
to discuss on this issue, and we have the information that from Prachanda's side, members were going to demand that Oli resigns, from the leadership of the party as well as the government because he's failed to deliver. But a group of group of 11 second rank leadership, they said the like breakup in the party would lead to disaster, and that will basically go against the uh, trust that voters had reposed on the party 3 years ago. So they lobbied with both the party chairs to suspend the meeting for a week, to defer the meeting for a week, so that unity efforts get a chance. So that's where the things are at the moment. And maybe today, if there was a resolution and if Prachanda would have defied the standing committee's majority decision, anything could have happened. So there are threats to the party unity, and if the two leaders don't come to an understanding, that some kind of understanding, then the unity is definitely fragile.
So, where does China figure into all this?
That's very interesting. Like Nepal has, again, we have to go little bit towards the history. Nepal is sandwiched between China and India. Three sides on three sides is India, and on the north is China. Although Nepal also maintained the policy of equal distance between the two neighbors, that was not possible practically because for trade, for education, for movement, Nepal was much closer to India, and India had a larger influence even in Nepal's internal politics. But in 2005, when I talked about, I think that was one of the major aberrations in India's policy towards Nepal was to have collaborated with a force that India called terrorists. And after that, when monarchy was out, and when India brought European Union and US in, as supporter in the radical changes in Nepal, that made China very suspicious. Why are all the forces, all the international forces, including India, that are hostile towards China, are present in Nepal in a big way? I think that from that moment, and because of the vacuum created by the sudden exit of the monarchy, China started coming in a big way in Nepal, enhancing its investment, which earlier was very, very nominal, and now it has got a very formidable presence because China suspects its threat perception is that India, in alliance with Union and America, might create problem for Tibet and for whole of China. Now there is Hong Kong, there is Taiwan. So naturally, it has come in a big way, and its investment has gone up. The highest FDI it's China's in Nepal. So after that, in order to protect its enhanced interest as well as investment, China appears to be emerging as a major factor influencing the domestic political course as well. That's where you can see China today much more powerful and much more influential than any other countries, including India, in Nepal.
So, Yubrajji, some of the questions that spring to my mind right away are, surely Nepal sees what China has done to a similar sized nation, also a Sanatani nation, Sri Lanka, where they gave a loan to the government. And then, when the government could not repay the loan, they took over one part of this country called Hambantota and the port and the area around it for a 99-year lease. Now, slowly but
Yes, yes.
steadily, what is happening is that first China said we will not have any military presence, only civilian presence. But people who live in that area say every civilian in Hambantota walks like a soldier. You can make whatever interpretation you want out of it. But the long and short of it is that China has got a slice of Sri Lanka today, and that's not going away for 99 years. And every time Sri Lanka gets into more financial difficulties, it is again looking at China and perhaps India also. But is Nepal headed for the same thing? For example, I think there was a bridge construction that was being thought of in the northern part of Nepal, where China was going to help construct the bridge. So I'm seeing a lot of parallels. How do you in Nepal view some of these things by China?
Well, Nepal has, uh, experimented this kind of development model, long-term leasing with India. Like two major canal projects, hydro projects, Gandak and Kosi. They are 99 years lease to India. Nepal, as I told you, is one-sided developmental activities and links were, with India earlier. Nepal started, began the link with China only in 60s when the highway was built. Now there are more highways coming up. Nepal has signed BRI, that's Belt and Road Initiative, in 2018, although no major projects has been initiated, although there are talks being, held, what could be the possible this thing. Of course, there are, because, there are debate in Nepal also, that Nepal could get into debt trap. But so far, no major projects. Couple of hydro projects China got in and withdrew. It has happened. No such long-term, like financial arrangement has been made with China.
So, Yubarajji, I have a small question. What is the foreign exchange reserves of Nepal today in dollars?
Oh well, yeah, I this COVID and other things, but Nepal's finance minister made a bit worrying kind of uh, revelations during the budget session very recently. Although he didn't talk about the foreign exchange, I think he said fairly comfortable, $3 billion or something. But here, but what other thing he said, that post-COVID phase, the government doesn't have enough to, for essential expenditure in the days to come. If because Nepal's large earning was from remittance, tourism, and both these sectors have been badly hit by COVID, 19.
Yes.
So this may not be very good phase talking about Nepal's economic situation.
No, the reason I asked that question was I have a theory that China will push their border roads initiative in those countries where those countries have healthy foreign exchange reserves. And if you will permit me, I'll give you what the theory is. Today, 99% of the commerce with China, buying or selling, does not happen with Chinese currency, RMB. So, what China has to do is it is totally dependent on companies that have set up shop from America or Europe in China to essentially bring in the foreign exchange. And the raw materials that China gets, even those countries are not willing to accept the RMB. They also want dollars. So, there is a huge demand for dollars in China. And China will only do deals with those countries where there is a chance that those countries can give it dollars. That's why I asked you this question, and we have to wait and see how it goes.
Well,
But go ahead, please go ahead. Please go ahead. Yeah.
yeah. Well, there is a talk going on between Nepal and China about convertibility of RMB and Nepali currency when they set up their industries, opening banks here, Chinese banks in Nepal. They are in the process, I guess. Although trade volume and business activities with China at the moment are still low. I told you more than 70% of the trade is still with India, even external trade, because the trade and the port is Calcutta port. So still, Nepal has a larger dealing with India. But in 2015, an agreement was signed between Nepal and China for trade and transit routes there. Although, like that happened because that was the time when India imposed about 5 month long blockade, economic blockade, and Nepal had to reel. Nepal, that was devastated by earthquake, was really under scarcity and all that. So as an alternative, Oli was the prime minister. He signed an agreement with China, although like those ports are still very far away, like 3,200 kilometers away from here. But as a backup, that has happened. But still, the larger bulk of trade is with India.
Well, about that blockade, we hear different versions.
Yeah,
What India says is that it was the Madhya Deshis or Madhesis who were the
yeah,
ones
that's right.
doing the blockade because they thought that their representation was not enough in the constitution. I'm just making observation here. I don't have anything to say for or against it. But so that anyway, that finally got resolved one way or the other. Moving on today, I hear now that Nepal has banned all Indian television channels that are being broadcast in Nepal. Why is that happening, sir?
Well, this is something even Indian media has decried, into my knowledge, and Indian, law officials are very not very comfortable with what some of the Indian channels presented 3 days ago, in which Chinese ambassador was, vilified. Chinese ambassador in Nepal, how Yangshi was quite vilified and given a very distorted picture about her meeting with Prime Minister Woli. And that was definitely in very bad taste, and no way did it represent the values of journalism. And so there was also, like, Woli is not very popular among the masses in the sense that sometimes what he speaks is people don't feel comfortable and media also criticizes. But this was one issue when Woli being, at the when when his political fate is being speculated on, there was huge demand that these channels should not be allowed. I don't think it's the whole of Indian channels. Yesterday it was, except Doordarshan, I guess that two or three channels, except two or three channels, others would be allowed to telecast here. But that is something I've spoken to my Indian friends, my friends in the bureaucracy there. They are very very embarrassed with the content of those programs.
Well, many Indians don't like what is being broadcast in their channels. It's a democracy. It's a loud democracy. Everybody has a right to choose what they want to do. However, I, I'm curious to know, in your opinion, what is the truth? There is a lot of allegations that the Chinese ambassador is sitting in on cabinet meetings, and that person is trying to bring about the peace, for example, between Prachanda and Oli. After all, this is ghar ki baat. Ghar ki baat ghar mein rehni chahiye. Why is this true, sir? Because I'm just asking you a question.
No, what is not true is Chinese ambassador is present in the cabinet meeting. Yes, some of our meetings recently with the president on April 27, last week again, with the prime minister last week again, with dissident leaders in a very visible manner. That is something which has been criticized in Nepal as an interference.
Hmm.
That diplomat is barred from doing under the Vienna Convention also.
Hmm.
That is something again. That is something again which the Indian ambassadors, especially after 2005,
Hmm.
between 2005 to 2050, used to do, and they're very unpopular about it. This is one of the reasons India getting unpopular in Nepal and India losing its traditional clout in Nepal. That became very counterproductive. I'm sure the activities of the Chinese ambassador is also not being liked here, and that could be counterproductive. And the other thing that has happened, which we think is an aberration, that is, after the Communist parties came to power in Nepal, Nepal Communist Party and Chinese Communist Party, they established a fraternal relation, and both decided that they would be holding regular session. They would learn about ski path, meaning the way President Xi has, been ruling and bringing about developmental activities in Nepal. They're two countries, they are diplomatic channel, but some of the things and decisions being taken by the party is is taken independently without the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here coming into the picture. So they are something very objectionable, and media has raised these issues in Nepal.
So in India, the communists are frequently poked fun at, and in that they're saying, "Oh, you have elections. Oh, so your next president is going to be selected by the Beijing Chinese Communist Party. You guys, what election? They tell you that you have to elect this person, and everybody raises their hands and elect it. This is the joke. People always pull the legs of the CPI party and the CPIM party in India. And India is a very, like I said, it's a very open democracy. People air their views, whether there is facts behind it or not. But this is frequently uttered. Now, you said that the Chinese Communist Party and the Nepalese Communist Party are now beginning to, correspond with each other, which is again, I am for not for one moment I'm saying that the Communist Party in India is doing the right thing, but they have been doing this thing. They used to also listen to Russia. Now they have, I think, so listen less to Russia and more to China. Essentially, it is like they're knowing which side of their bread is buttered. That is the allegation. Now, in India, communists are in a decline. There's only one state that now has the communists in power, and even that may not last after the next election, which means that there'll be zero. However, my question to you, sir, is in Nepal, do you feel that the CCP will start interfering in the selection process of who shall be ruling the country?
Well, like my limited understanding of Indian Communist Party is, yes, in 1962, that saw the split of the Communist Party of India over, like what response to formulate in China. And CPM was born out of that. But still, we see regular party congresses taking place there and all that. But here in Nepal, yes, like what has happened is, like 2005, I'm regularly referring to this 2005 because major radical political changes took place in Nepal in 2005, 2006, in which India took a lot of undue interest, and Nepal became a republic, secular, and federal country without the people of Nepal getting directly involved, without their getting the right to decide on these crucial issues. But the political changes, an election that took place subsequently, the Constitution 2017 election, yes, communist parties have come to power, and we do criticize Nepali leader for having begun a practice of taking orders from Delhi and now also from Beijing. Like these leaders frequently visit, they involve the Chinese Communist Party leaders in their internal matters. This is something we think is a compromise on political sovereignty of the country. And democracy doesn't thrive or survive in, in a country that compromises on its sovereignty. So, be it, like Nepal has a history of never having allowed a foreign flag fly over its territory. Never in its, like known history. That these leaders are compromising. Be it, like initially inviting India in Nepal's internal politics, India bringing America and European Union in its internal politics, and now China coming and kind of, uh, like building a relation with Nepal's Communist Party in a way that Nepali people definitely do not respect or encourage.
For the longest time, we in India used to be happy that there was at least one country that said it was a Hindu Rashtra, and that was Nepal. And that also got shattered when you went secular. I can't say that India is a saint in this respect. In the 70s, they changed their constitution to declare themselves as a secular country. At the people to people level, people, any Hindu considers that they need to visit Pashupatinath temple at least once in their lifetime. And I'm reasonably sure that those who live in Nepal would like to come all the way down to Rameshwaram. After all, Sitama is supposed to be from Nepal. And what is today's Nepal? And so this country to country level, how do you see the relation? Because we treat Nepalis as just one of us. I don't see anywhere. I mean, we see them in our temples, we visit their homes. I don't see anything at the people to people level. These political
Yeah.
skirmishes, this gamesmanship can happen. What is your read on that, sir?
Well, that's a very interesting, and let me give some time to like get into this without
Yes.
getting into the demerit of the concept of secularism, federalism, or republic, or like monarchy, whatever. Yes, Nepal was a Hindu kingdom, and the very deep cultural linkages between the people of Nepal and people of India. I'll give you some examples like Nepalese Earlier, in the previous generation, Kashi, that is, Varanasi, Allahabad, Lucknow, Patna, Patliputra used to be the learning center for most Nepalis also. So those who studied there, who were educated there, would definitely increase their experiences and outlook on the culture that was common culture, heritage, religion, civilization, all that. And like Rameswaram, you mentioned, King of Nepal was the only person who would have access to the sanctum sanctorum of Rameswaram and Puri, Jagannath Puri temple, because, like under the Sankaracharya setup, Nepal would be under the jurisdiction of Puri Sankaracharya. So that was the arrangement. And Gorakhnath, Nepal's presiding deity being Guru Gorakhnath, who is worshipped and revered in, like large part of North India, right up to Gujarat and all that. Like in the month of Magh, that is sometimes in February, January, February, Gorakhnath Mutt in Gorakhpur, they do distribute khichdi, khichdi is prasad
Yes,
there
yes, yes, yes.
to celebrate the appearance of Guru Gorakhnath there when that place was going through a crisis of cholera, like came epidemic there. So even today, that like the first these materials like rice, lentils, and all that to prepare khichdi used to go from Nepal Palace. That is over now. That is over. That cultural linkage is now over. That is one. But even political question coming to secularism and all that, when the movement against takeover of power by king in 2005 was on here in Nepal, republic or secularism were not the demand. Of course, they could have been debated, like debated separately after. But again, I told you, India led that initiative, and European Union and Americans, they said they will support India's prescription to make Nepal a secular country, Nepal a republic, if India agrees to make Nepal secular. So, and they also said for them, secularism would be without any meaning if there is no right to conversion as a fundamental right. So this is how political changes were imposed in Nepal without the people getting involved, and this has adversely affected a kind of a traditional balance of relations between India and Nepal. It was not well considered, well debated decision. So let's see how things move. But this large scale conversion and evangelical forces acting freely in Nepal is also changing its demographic and demographic and faith-based kind of tradition, which is definitely objectionable. But you see American
We have lost him momentarily. We have lost him
yeah,
momentarily. Yeah, please come back.
yeah,
Start from America, please.
repeatedly saying that you need to have this right to conversion as a fundamental right in the constitution, which basically is which basically amounts to imposing certain religion
Yes,
on
yes,
Nepal.
yes. Well, that's a challenge that not only affecting India but also Nepal and even Sri Lanka, Mauritius. I can tell you many countries are being afflicted by this, and that's something that everybody has to stay together and fight it. Sir, last question for you. We are about five minutes past our time. Last question for you. How do you see the political system evolve? Do you think, in your opinion, Sri Krishna Prasad Oli is going to step down and Mr. Prachanda will take over, or do you think Nepal is headed for elections now?
No, Nepal constitution doesn't have a provision of dissolution of parliament in midterm poll.
I see.
If the government don't, yeah, if the government goes today, they have to give all. I mean, they have to give chances to all claimant. And it's KP Oli is Khadga Oli, by the way, Khadga Prasad Oli. And I think he'll continue for some times. I don't know how many weeks or months. Definitely he's fragile, but chances of his stepping down are very, very less at the moment because he still commands within the Communist Party, parliamentary party, he commands majority there. That's the ultimately deciding uh, like place. So I think I don't know for how many months, but he'll continue.
Wonderful. So let's go on to our question and answer session now, sir. I have a few questions for you. Bhavesh Mishra wants to know, has Oli ended the foreign policy of non involvement? If yes, will future governments of Nepal be able to backtrack from this shift?
Well, there are. This is unfortunately Nepal's foreign policy is now, like we don't see much consistency there. We have in different phases. I told you 2005 to 15, it was total alliance towards India because India dictated Nepal's political change. Then 2015, then then 2015 onwards, it was visible tilts towards China. That was in rebound to again that blockade, whatever could be its interpretation. We also may be seeing another phase very soon as Woli is uh, determined to, like have this Millennium Challenge Corporation Nepal Compact ratified by Parliament, overruling, sizable protest within his own party. They are saying that it has got a military component, or I mean, it's part of the Indo U.S. Strategic like activities is part of that. It has got a military security component, and there is also protest. Communists, two things. One, their worldview is anti-America and anti-India. We also may be seeing that phase because Oli might be seen as aligning with the US. So that inconsistency we do see.
Well, does a non-political organization like the Swayam Sevak Sangh (RSS) does it have a footprint in Nepal? And if yes, could you use them as a united force to try and combat this conversion challenge?
Well, RSS, which is called Hindu Swayam Sevak Sangh outside India, I
Yes,
guess has a sizable presence. But I think they did decide to go by what the government of India was doing in the political changes. When Nepal got transformed towards secular republic,
right.
and also the fact that there was fragmentation of Hindu society, Hill Hindus, Tarai Hindus, and all that. That there was a tactical approach by the evangelist in dividing that society. But I think RSS couldn't sense its long-term implications, and I think they didn't have much impact in what was happening.
Well, my concern, sir, is that in doing all these things, these are like misunderstanding between a brother and another brother. And in this, the big picture, which is the country's character, is being put at risk. I'm not just saying about Nepal, it applies to India, applies to Sri Lanka, and so on and so forth. It is my hope that we can see clear through all these mud and start acting as one. Now, there was one last question that I personally have for you is what prompted the Oli government to change the map? I mean, this has been something that has been around for many, many years. It seemed like it was a provocation of some sorts.
Well, I won't call it provocation because this territory has been listed as disputed territory.
Mm,
It's called disputed because both sides are staking their claim over it. But when in November India included these territories in its map, Nepal did right. In fact, to Oli was reluctant within his party, to include these maps pending a response from India, because his government wrote twice to the Indian government to fix a date for dialogue on these border issues. But India didn't respond to it, and he was under pressure from his party. And then he said, okay, if it's a disputed territory and if India has included these territories in its map, Nepal also must include in the map. So, but we must settle it out through dialogue, which is fairly, like a reasonable approach.
Well, Mr. KP Oli is perceived in a certain way in India, and I'm not saying that it's right or wrong. It's there's a media that has portrayed him in a certain way. However, I do know some senior leaders of the current party have a very favorable impression of Mr. Oli. So there are people in the Indian dispensation who can see through all this, mud and obfuscation created by the media to try and paint somebody as being good or bad. India, I mean, they know. Question, sir, is I'm really hoping that this controversy that is now raging is put to rest quickly, because how is the coronavirus spread in Nepal, and is there reason for concern on that front also?
Well, coronavirus, it's a pandemic. But Nepal has been lucky to, uh, uh, because so far 16,000 people have been affected. I think 6 or 7,000 of them cured, and 35 casualties taken place. But you cannot take a chance, because there are people coming from India, people coming from Gulf countries, even Nepalese who are living
Right,
there. They are
right,
coming,
right.
and the country is won on that. In a situation of national crisis, people have been very cooperative to the government when it ordered lockdown, although they had to face a lot of hardships there. So let's hope that the government and people together would be restrained and helping each other to contain it. So far the outcome is good.
Well, sir, I wish you all the best, and I thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us on a live hangout. Let us hope and pray that relations between India and Nepal improve. Whatever be the misunderstandings, it should be like a family feud. Family brothers will have to sit together, eat together, and find a common cause forward. Thank you very much, and
Thank,
we'll be back with you soon, I hope, with more such interesting hangouts. Thank you so much.
thank
Namaskar.